Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another brand new 2025 Collecta release, another very exciting release from them. This is the Ingentia Prima. Now, I do apologize if I mispronounced the name. I am very unfamiliar with this species, and in fact, I really know very little about it, and that kind of is going to come into play here as we move through the review, because I know, a little bit, like the fact that it's a late Triassic species and stuff, but I don't know the anatomy perfectly, and I'm usually pretty comfortable following along with what Collecta releases. However, I have heard some things about this figure that I'm not entirely positive on, and that would be like the digits and stuff of the figure overall. I've heard, specifically one thing is the dew claw here should not be present here on the outside of the leg, and potentially there were too many nails for the front feet here, but I'm not entirely sure again, so I'm not going to comment on this one as far as accuracy goes. Again, if you guys are more familiar with the species, let me know a little bit in the comment section. I would love to learn more about it. I did try to read up on it a little bit, but I couldn't find a whole lot of information pertaining to that situation. So I would love to hear from you guys, which would in turn help me learn more about this species, because I would definitely love to know more about it. But as far as the figure itself goes, we can start up here at the head sculpt, get a nice closer look at it. You can see the head sculpt actually looks really, really nice. It's very peaceful looking at the same time. It does have its mouth sculpted in a closed position. We can see the skin texture looks pretty good, pretty vibrant, like I'm used to when it comes to Collecta. We also have the nostrils sculpted out up here on the snout. The eyes are painted with a nice glossy black, pretty much as you usually expect when it comes to a Collecta dinosaur. We also have the ears sculpted out back there as well. There's a very nice greenish tone for the majority of the body color of this one, but they've also applied a dry brushing over pretty much the entire figure, at least as far as the greenish areas go, which looks really good. And you can see when we turn it over here to the opposing side, pretty much the exact same case over here. Again, it looks very nice as far as the dry brushing they've given this figure. Definitely helps to bring the detail out very nicely. We do also have a lighter tone moving down along the underside. We can see the transition to that lighter tone is pretty smooth, pretty natural. We have the throat sculpted out and highlighted nicely as we move down. We also have some patterning that moves along the top, and basically you have a brown that leads through the top. Starts out with kind of like some small stripes up here on the top of the head, and then it starts to pick up in size, and as we continue to lead down through the course of the neck, we can obviously see those stripes increase quite drastically in size. Moving down through the neck, the skin texture again continues to look pretty good. There's not really a whole lot as far as variation to the scales go. Moving down the neck at least, they look pretty much the same the whole way down, but they look very good, and again very crisp. We can overall see kind of like some musculature and tensing to the neck leading down as well. Once we lead into the body itself, we can make out the shoulder blade right there. We start to see a little more variation to the scales moving through the body, especially right here. You can see a cluster of larger scales, and then again they become a lot finer as we move down further into the front limb. We got the elbow sculpted out right there. Nice curvatures to the skin in the joint of the elbow. You can also see some wrinkling and scrunching up of the skin up there at the top of that leg as well. And as you move down into the wrist, we've also got some creasing in the wrist. The skin texture again quite fine moving down through the front leg. We also have the foot sculpt here leading down, and again this is one area that I'm definitely not super familiar with as far as what it should look like, but as far as this version goes, we can see we've got quite a few toes sculpted out, as well as the nails painted with a grayish tone. Leading back up into the stomach, we can see the skin's kind of scrunched together a little bit because both of these legs are held closer together on this side. Again, we have that very nice dry brushing, but it also looks like we almost have like a brownish wash, or maybe the original base coat might have been like a brown, because I kind of see like some slight hints of brownish tones kind of mixing in with the greenish tones. Maybe it's just my eyes playing tricks on me, but it does look really nice and definitely helps to give, a little more depth to the actual coloration of this dinosaur. We have a little bit of a bulging belly for our figure, as well as when you come to the top, you can see some osteoderms following along the top of the dinosaur, basically following along the spinal column, but they do extend down into the side of the dinosaur as well, as you can see them heading into the stomach region. Back here, the hip bone isn't super super noticeable, but it is slightly present, like you can kind of see it protruding through the skin. Moving down into the rear leg, we have the muscle definition defined, but not overly defined, which looks good. Definitely quite the big bulging calf muscle for sure. We have the knee, and again, some more creasing in the joint of the knee, in the back of the knee. And then leading down into the rear foot sculpt, again, we have that dew claw sculpted out on the outside here of the leg, and I have heard that potentially that's not how the dinosaur should be. That's not exactly how it was in real life, and might have just been a little bit of a mix-up as far as the sculpting of this one. But like I said, I'm not super familiar with the species, so I don't know a whole lot about it. Moving down into the foot sculpt, though, you can see the toes are sculpted pretty nicely. Again, the nails painted with a grayish tone. This foot is obviously leaving the ground, kind of about to take a step, which we can definitely see as the other foot is kind of planted over there. Or maybe this foot's actually coming down onto the ground. I'm not entirely sure. Leading back up here, into the tail, we see the skin kind of stretching off of the tail right there. And we continue to have that patterning, as you can see, moving along the back. Definitely gets a lot more impressive, a lot larger, and even starts to kind of branch out as you lead down, which looks pretty cool, actually. I think it's a very nice, kind of flashy, but not overly flashy color scheme, but definitely attention drawing, no doubt about that. And as we lead out, again, the skin texture looks pretty much the same moving through the tail. Like, there's no real big differences leading out through the tail. I don't see any osteoderms. Well, maybe a few actually up here on the top, but I don't see a whole lot of difference when it comes to the style of scales and everything and skin texture leading out through the length of that quite impressively long tail. We can see it does have a little bit of a curve to it and also kind of curves downward. And then moving along the underside, we also have that lighter tone, kind of like a light gray following along the underside with, again, a much finer type of skin texture. The cloaca is present, also highlighted with a darker tone there. And then as we continue to move along the underside, it all looks really nicely done. Very impressive paint application, I would say, on this one. And then leading down along the other side, you can see it looks pretty much the same, especially when it comes to the head and neck, because for the most part, even though it does have a slight curve, it's not drastic enough that it's going to cause a massive difference in the appearance from one side to the other. We can see, though, as I almost dropped the figure, the front leg is really outstretched over here, kind of as it's taking a step, and we can see that the positioning of the foot is kind of extending to plant the toes as the dinosaur is kind of walking along. We again have the same type of skin texture with the kind of larger cluster of scales right here and finer skin texture moving down into the front foot right there, and that dry brushing, of course. We've got a much better visual of the stomach over here because, again, both legs are spread further apart, really kind of stretching the skin out and just showing off the detailing of the stomach a little bit nicer than what we had seen on the initial side, but you can really get a good feel for how the scales look over here, as well as, again, the nice looking paint apps we have for this one. And then moving back into the rear leg, again, this leg is slightly extended back, just showing the positioning of the dinosaur walking along. It almost feels like, to me, like it's kind of stepping in to lead down to like a watering hole, like it's about to kind of start to curve the head down and maybe take a drink. That's just sort of my takeaway from it. But we also, again, lead back out into the tail, which the tail now does curve toward us just slightly. But overall, that is a really nice looking figure. Inaccuracies aside, I think they did a great job on the sculpt and also a great job on the paint apps of this one. Size-wise, it's also pretty impressive. It is not a small figure. I think it's 1/40th scale, so it does have a pretty decent size to it. Lengthwise, you're looking at about 9 3/4 inches or around 25 centimeters. And then for a height, the highest point would actually probably be the tail. You're looking at just shy of 2 3/4 inches or around 7 centimeters. And then to the top of the head, a little over 2 inches or just about 5.5 centimeters, roughly. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collecta human being next to our Collecta Ingentia prima, and you can see again that the figure does have a pretty good, pretty impressive size to it. It's not huge by any means, but it is still quite decently sized. And this is another situation from Collecta this year where we have a species that I have 0 figures of in my collection, so of course it's great to be able to add a new species to my collection, but that also means that I don't really have any other figures of this species to compare with it, so we'll just go ahead and bring in a few random Collecta figures. This time we have the Mercuryceratops, which we can see again is obviously a good bit smaller. We also have their beautiful Metriacanthosaurus here, which again is obviously quite a bit smaller. Then we have the Collecta Parallel Titan here next to our Ingentia, and again you can see that they're kind of similar in like length and just a little bit different as far as height and body mass. Then using a few figures I used in the previous Collecta review, we also have the Ceratosaurus, which obviously is a bit larger, and the extremely popular Collecta Feathered Tyrannosaurus Rex, which clearly is a lot larger. And then we have, finally, the Collecta Deluxe Dimetrodon going face-to-face here, and you can see, again, how they size up next to each other, and obviously the fact that they're kind of similar in size if the Dimetrodon didn't have such a huge sale. So this brand new 2025 Collecta Ingentia is a pretty darn cool figure and a very cool species to be able to add to our collections. Definitely very nicely sculpted, very nicely painted overall. I like the fine detail. Again, the detail looks really good on this one, and they've done a great job of making sure that they highlight the fine detail with the way that they've painted this. But the scale detail and everything looks pretty good through the course of the body. There is a bit of variation to the scales. We've also got osteoderms and stuff throughout, and again, the very nice dry brushing they've applied really helps to make the detail pop in the best way possible and just kind of add a little more depth to the paint job, making it look a little more realistic. And the color scheme is pretty nicely done, nice natural, kind of has a nice element of flashiness without it being too flashy, which is a plus. The overall sculpt is really well done when it comes to the pose as well. Very peaceful looking for this one, just kind of walking along, just kind of showing the majestic side of this species, I guess you could say. So that is definitely a plus as well. I could really see this one being very photogenic because of how nice it looks as far as the overall appearance and sculpt and pose and everything. But as I already mentioned, there does seem to be a little bit of confusion as far as maybe being, a few inaccuracies with the figure. But as I already also mentioned, I'm not familiar enough with the species to confirm whether or not the inaccuracies are legit. So I think I would have to rely on you guys. Anybody that knows more about this species, definitely let me know in the comment section, because as I said, I would love to learn more about it. But overall, it's a very cool figure and an absolutely epic species choice to include in their 2025 line. So just like usual, if you are interested in this, it is not available quite yet, but will be very soon. You will be able to purchase it from the one and only Everything Dinosaur, as well as other incredible websites like Happy Hen Toys and DeJenkins and Minizoo and all those places where you can pick up your Collecta releases. So make sure you keep an eye out for this figure. Once it drops, definitely pick it up, and of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.